August. Why are they not interested in voting? We'll be putting that in the next presentation, and other issues also on perceptions of electoral fairness, how much confidence people have that the next elections will be free and fair, and so on. So that will all come later. Today we are emphasizing mainly the presidential contest, as you've seen there. As we say in the introduction, without getting into a lot of details, since we did the last survey in November, we consider there have been two major events that have taken place that would affect these numbers. Of course, there's campaign activity going on all the time, but especially the December 10th announcement by the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga that he officially would contest. I mean, it wasn't official, but it was a public declaration because people were waiting him to make that statement. And then in the middle of last month, when ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi, former vice president, had his NDC, and he, together with the Ford Kenya leader, announced that they would be working together with Deputy President William Ruto in this grouping that's now called Kenya Kwanza, even if it remains unclear, very unclear, on both, for both who the running mates are going to be. It certainly appears, however, that Honorable Musalia will not be standing on his own, but he didn't rule that out either. So those are the two events that we think have mostly affected our results. And in terms of the relative standing between these two leading contenders, or horses, as you people in the media call them, as opposed to some other donkeys, it seems they've balanced each other out a little bit. Raila's coming out on December 10th and saying very clearly he's going to stand appears to have given him a boost. Likewise, the movement of Musalia and Honorable Wetangula, Senator Wetangula, to the Ruto camp seems to have given the Deputy President a bit of a boost. But because we're not interviewing the same people in every survey as a panel and asking them, have you changed who you're supporting or who you will vote for, that's a bit speculative. Okay, we begin with just sort of the general views that Kenyans gave us about the country's direction, and also related that to some presidential choices. And you can see overall that slightly more than half of all our respondents, who are nationally representatives, believe the country is going in the wrong direction. From left to right, beginning with the people in northern Kenya, that's the highest level of 39% who believe the country is going in the right direction, and the lowest proportion, the smallest proportion, is in lower eastern. And I should also say, we did this last time, but in our last release in November, but we didn't have a live event. Tifa are no longer using the old 8 provinces to disaggregate our national results, as you can see. A few of them are the same, such as Western and Nyanza and Coast and Nairobi, but because of the way the campaigns have been targeting different sections of the electorate, we decided to take off that section of what used to be Eastern Province around the east side of Mount Kenya and put it together with the middle and the west side of Mount Kenya and call that whole area Mount Kenya. And then we split what used to be Rift Valley really into 3 parts. We have Central Rift, which is mainly the Kalenjin and the settlement areas centered around Nakuru County. And then we have the Lower Rift, which is basically Kajiado and Narok. And then the upper part, Turkana, we've put with the whole northern part of the country, since the population up there is so small. Now, that's not to say that culturally, economically, politically, that everybody who lives in the north is similar, whether they're Somalis or Samburus, Turkanas, no. But it's just because that population grouping, even combined, is pretty small. And they have, general ecological conditions of arid, semi-arid areas, so there's quite a bit of pastoralism. We just thought that was easier. We cannot give results for all 47 counties because the statistical margin of error is too high. as you'll see, for the overall sample here of 1,541, I think it is, the margin of error is plus or minus 7. And I hope everybody knows what that means, margin of error. Very simply, it means if we ask people in the interview, have you had a cup of tea today? And 50% say yes. It means with that sample size, the real number could be 52.7 or it could be 47.3 because there's an error margin of 2.7% either above or below the figure that we get. When we break the sample down into sections, those margins of error go up higher. And that's also one reason why we don't give decimals. We just give round figures. So if it's 2.8, we call it 3% and so on. And then for people who said the country is going in the right direction or wrong direction, we asked, what's the main reason that you say that? For people who said it's going in neither right or wrong, we didn't ask them because we wouldn't know how to interpret that answer. And you could see that for people who believe the country is going in the right direction, the two most frequent responses we got were infrastructure development and the peace and stability in the country at the top, 18% each. Logically, nobody who said the country is going in the wrong direction mentioned infrastructure or peace. I mean, how could you, unless you believe that infrastructure is somehow causing traffic jams and therefore it's sending the country in the wrong direction, or you'd rather be fighting than having peace. So the zeros there are from people who believe the country is going in the right direction. Among those who think the country is going in the wrong direction, you can see nearly half, 45%, talk about just surviving the economy with regard to cost of living and inflation. Again, results are not so unexpected, but it's good to find out when people give a qualitative answer, such as right or wrong, better or worse, and so on, why they are saying so. And you can see at the bottom, only 11% either wouldn't answer the question or gave reasons that we couldn't figure out what they were trying to say. Now, we also thought, as we're moving towards an election, it would be interesting to see, is there any difference between supporters of the deputy president and of the former prime minister, the two main contenders, in where they think the country is going? And what is striking to me, especially historically, is that more than twice as many of Ruto's supporters think the country's going in the wrong direction, that's 45%, than are supporters of Raila Odinga. And when I think back to the last three elections that I've been working on opinion polls, 2007, 2013, 2017, when we did this kind of a correlation, the supporters, or those said they would want Raila to be the next president or would vote for him, were always more numerous in terms of thinking things are going wrong in the country. So this is not a complete reversal, but it's quite a dramatic one when you see the difference between 21% and 45%. And I would throw this to you in the media to ask, why do you think this is? Now, for right direction, there's not much difference, but slightly more of Raila supporters think the country's going in the right direction. Is that because more of them are convinced that he will be the next president? Or are they thinking about other things when they make that judgment? You know, because there's limited time when you're interviewing people on many issues, you can't dig so deeply into every single question. Let's try one more here. We also asked people, compared to your economic position 1 year ago, how do you characterize your economic position today? Now, we see overall that only about 1 in 5 of both Raila supporters and Ruto supporters say they're better off, 21 and 18%. About the same percentage, nearly 2/3, 61, 63, say they're worse off. Now, you can interpret this however you want, but to me, basically it shows that the electorate that these two, and any other candidates for that matter, are competing for, they're basically the same. Kenyans, by and large, are in the same economic situation regardless of their political orientation. And yet we see such hard-fought contests between candidates and political parties. So if you're a Marxist economist or a Marxian economist who just follows the economic theories of the great economic and political philosopher Karl Marx, you're not going to get very far in understanding Kenyan politics. But one other point that I mentioned here in the comment, remember a year ago we were right in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. Things were really bad. We were having curfews, we were having lockdowns, and yet not even 2/3 of Kenyans say that, only 2/3 of Kenyans say that they're worse off now than before. Surely everybody should be better off given what the Treasury, Central Bureau of Statistics is telling us about the growth rate and so on. And yet, when people compare themselves to a year ago, almost 2/3 say now they're worse off than they were then, however bad things were then. So let this be a lesson to you macroeconomists that the figures for the economy as a whole, as put together by the National Bureau of Statistics, don't necessarily reflect the conditions that ordinary Kenyans are having. We would like to see, of course, these figures reversed, where more than half say they're better off now compared to a year ago, and only 10% or 5% are worse off. But that's not what we get. Okay, now we come to our section on political parties, which is very much in flux. And the first question we asked is, if there's any political party that you support or feel closest to, which is that? Now we got a quarter, 26%, who said none. Yani siwezi kujifahamisha ati naunga mkono chama chochote cha kisiasa, whatever. And another 3% wouldn't answer the question. But UDA is clearly the most popular party, which, as was the case in November, which is remarkable given it's also, I think, the newest one. There may have been some small parties that have been registered within the last few months that are more that are newer than UDA, but its rise is remarkable. But of course, when you see Jubilee at only 4%, and you know that Jubilee won the last election, you can understand where you can guess where UDA got most of its followers from, but we've actually explored that in more detail, and we'll get to that in a moment. When we show across the regions the distribution of party support, we see UDA is the most popular party in 5 of our 9 zones, and ODM is the most popular in 4. Again, not so surprising. It's basically a statistical tie in South Rift, as I said, which is Kajiado and Narok. 1% higher for ODM there. But, look at Coast. Many people in the media and even political analysts on television are still talking about Coast as an ODM zone. Our data did not show that. UDA is slightly more popular in the coastal region, 32 to 28. Of course, we saw an independent candidate supported by UDA win the Msambweni by-election about a year ago. Central Rift, of course, the heartland of that part of the country, overwhelmingly UDA. And in fact, only in Central Rift for UDA and only in Nyanza for ODM are these support figures a majority. That is above 50%. And when you're doing your write-ups, I hope everybody makes a clear distinction between majority and plurality. Can somebody tell me the difference? What's the definition of a plurality? I can see you weren't my students at the University of Nairobi when I taught there. A plurality means the largest number in a group of numbers, but not over 50%. Majority means at least one above 50. I know your readers probably would be confused if you start talking about saying, oh, UDA has a plurality in Coast. They might think it's split into many parties. But check your dictionaries. And we basically put every party in this list that had at least 1%. Notice that a very new party, the Democratic Action Party of Kenya, DAP, has got 2% in both South Rift and Western. And, in a close election, a couple of percent can make a difference. Not that, we don't have quite a long time to go before that election, 6 months, but still. You may want to use these figures when you're interviewing politicians or people from different parts of the country. Keeping in mind, as I said at the beginning of this comment, subsamples, the margins of error are higher. So let's not worship the figures too much, within a range of a couple of percent. And we giving you this trend slide going back to almost 2 years now. We're not in June of this year yet, but it's like 18, 19 months. And you can see some really dramatic shifts here. Of course, the main one is what I just said, the rise of UDA in green from really nothing at the end of 2020 to being the most popular party now. And basically the collapse of Jubilee. Look at this. 40% in the middle of 2020. And in less than 2 short years, as we said, down to just 4%. Not surprising, because as we all know, Jubilee was the child of Baba na Mama, TNA and URP. I don't know which one was the Mama and which was the Baba. But of course, if there's been a de facto divorce, that leaves the Toto, Jubilee, more or less